Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Hello, and assalamu alaikum to everybody who's tuned into PTV1 and are watching World this morning in 46 different countries. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you're having a great morning so far. If it's morning time in your country, but if it's evening time, or if it's night time, or if it's bedtime, please make sure that you watch the entire show and then go to your beds as well. Other than that, we hope and we pray that everybody out there is ready to kickstart their day with us. With me, ladies and gentlemen, the very interesting, the very amazing, the very intelligent, the very philosophical. She happens to be Miss Shiza Hashmi, and I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan. Hello, Shiza. How are you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely great. Thank you so much for asking. And today specifically, I do not feel philosophical. Well, jokes apart, of course. Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing?
Well, I think I'm doing absolutely fine, perfect. You know, I slept early, woke up early. And, you know, for the last 2 weeks, I wasn't really feeling myself, you know, the way I am, the way I actually want to be a little bouncy and, you know, here and there, and kind of grasping everything and whatever is on my to-do list that I should be able to do that as well. And, you know, for the last 2 weeks, I was a little procrastinating as well, you know, because there were a few things which I wanted to do, but I didn't have the energy. Alhamdulillah, I'm back in shape and in my zone and in my vibe, and I want everybody to catch this positive vibe, because there's this one important thing which I wanted to talk about today. And I guess that it's going to be a solution for everybody who's out there.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
Of course,
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, imagine just like, you know, every night before sleeping, what we do is that we put up an alarm and make sure that we wake up to that. And we do not know certainly whether we're going to wake up tomorrow morning or not. So, what I thought was that, hey, you know what? It's the hope which actually keeps you going. So, for every problem in life, for every problem you kind of face in life, ladies and gentlemen, there's only one solution. In fact, two. Number one is faith in Allah, and number two is hope. Please make sure that you kind of have that faith in Allah as well, and then make sure that you're always hopeful about situations, conditions, whatever's going to come your way in life. I think that's a simple message.
Absolutely.
Make sure that you follow that.
That's beautiful. And you know what, Shahzad, what I feel like hope is also, while of course it is divine, it is unconditional, and I'll tell you what I mean by that.
Yeah, well, I heard love was unconditional, but I never heard that hope is
Let me clear you on that, it's not. Anyway, about hope, well, that definitely is. So let's talk about the person who might think that his life is just shattering all over around him, and he's no control over it. But still, to have the thought of, like you said, waking up the next day, or probably seeing someone, like maybe their friends, maybe their family, they'll feel better. Or to have the smallest example, I'll tell you what. Imagine someone, this can be a little dark, but imagine someone at a gunpoint, right? At the last moment of their life, I think it's human nature to survive. Survival is human nature, right? You're still, till the end point, you're struggling to either get out of the situation or somehow control the situation.
Someone just praying, Allah me, aaj bacha le, Allah
but
ki
isn't
kasam,
that hope
kabhi
as
dobara
well?
masti nahi karunga.
Isn't that hope as well?
Yeah,
right?
it is.
So I feel like hope is definitely unconditional. It is innate in humans. There are definitely different channels of taking it out as well. But yes, hope is beautiful.
Exactly. And in addition to that, thank you very much for saying that. Thank you very much for agreeing that hope is beautiful. And it's always going to be beautiful. It's certainly very hard at times when obviously you think that, you know, nothing around you is actually in a perfect shape. But inshallah, you know, there in days to come, you will see that, you know, that there will be happier days as well. And the good news is that, you know, there will be happier days, inshallah. That's something which you really need to stick with as well. But, you know, this message I took out from a book which I was reading last night. And I believe that books really do have an impact on people. But today, what I've done is that I've actually taken out a picture where I'm actually going to share that how books can instantly change your life, ladies and gentlemen. So please go ahead and take a look at this picture. Please go ahead.
All right.
All right, so we see this lady who's actually probably in a subway train as well, and she was reading, and the book she was reading was How to Sleep.
How to sleep well.
I think it's fantastic because this is an instant impact I've seen on anyone, and that too of reading a book. Wow,
it's
wonderful.
So funny. But don't you feel, okay, so at one point it does make you think that it might be edited for the sake of the clouds, but it's not. I know it's not, but it's also so funny to look at. Naturally, actually, even if the title was not the same, books do make me sleepy. But, you know, I wish I would just...
It kind of speaks a lot about you, that what kind of a student you were. Because obviously all of those students who sleep while reading books are the students
I used
who are
to sleep around books and just sort of hope that I would wake up with all the knowledge in them.
I need to talk about that because usually this is something which I always used to do. So my parents, they were like, hey, you know what, son, you do not study. You really need to study. Otherwise, you will have an odd job in life. How will you survive and all of these things? So what I did was every time I was closer to my books in front of them, I would feel really drowsy and sleepy. So I would scatter all the books on my bed
Okay.
and sleep underneath one of
Oh
them.
my
as
God, same here.
and my mom was
I
like,
feel
"Beta,
like
what did you study?" I was like, I've studied so much, but since I slept, I've forgotten everything.
that is why I feel like we both landed the same job as well, which might be questionable for a lot of
Yeah,
family members out there. But ladies and gentlemen, definitely, Shazad, we've spoken about books so much and how they sort of, change your personality, sort of instill newer traits in you that you never knew, first of all, existed or even you
Yeah.
could pick up on. And they're, of course, always, and I can promise that whenever we, of course, sort of look at better things to, better books, I want to say, or better kind of knowledge to learn from,
Yep.
you'll always be a better person. There's no such book in the world, I would say, that you would read and be like, you know what, I ruined my personality after reading this. It doesn't happen that way.
I mean, it can too, though. It can
I
take you
mean, then
anywhere.
choose the right kind of
It
books.
truly
Oh,
depends
yeah.
who's written the book.
Definitely so. But I also feel like, Shazad, ever since then, this incumbent government came into being, sorry for the slip of tongue. I feel like I had a lot of coffee and now I just can't control it.
I can see that.
All right. So PTI actually is actually focusing a lot on developing Pakistan as a welfare state.
True.
Now, what does that mean? Of course, while it's such a vast or an umbrella term, there are so many things that entails. One of those things is definitely how a character of a person or the public or the entire nation can drive the nation towards success or failure for that matter. And I feel like our president, prime minister, a visionary that he is, and we always talk about his ideas and whatnot, he realized that this is one thing that maybe we're lacking, maybe it's deteriorating in our society right now. If we solidify it right at this moment and nip the evil in the bud, we are looking at a brilliant nation in the future.
Exactly. Thank you very much for saying that, because, ladies and gentlemen, that has been the vision of our Prime Minister, Alhamdulillah. And I think that moving in that direction, we will be doing the right thing, because this is for the very first time that any government in my life is actually thinking about how to actually kind of go about character building of our youngsters, and that too upon the Seeratul Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and which I believe is one of the most amazing initiatives which have been taken by the government so far. There was a meeting which was chaired by the Prime Minister Imran Khan as well, just a day ago, where a lot of ministers and dignitaries and scholars kind of contributed on what they wanted when we talk about character building of the youngsters of Pakistan, and that too keeping in view the personality and the characteristics of the personality of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And this surely is the way forward, because when we talk about compassion, when we talk about love, when we talk about forgiving, when we talk about doing business, when we talk about any facet of life, ladies and gentlemen, the only person we really need to look forward to is Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And this is something which we wanted to talk about. But first things first, I think what we really need to do is that we need to introduce our guest over here in the studios with us. We're very lucky, we're very grateful. This is the second time that he's actually taken out time, and he will be the one who will be sharing what was actually being discussed within the meeting. I mean, I don't know whether it's confidential or not, but since I'm an interviewer, it's my job. I will ask questions.
We'll find
So
out.
ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I mean, his portfolio is so lengthy that while I was reading it, I was like, that Shazad, you should have certainly done something else in life as well. But Alhamdulillah, I think that there are always roles given by Allah Almighty to other people.
Indeed.
And they fit in these roles as well. So, which is why, ladies and gentlemen, today, without any further ado and with a lot of gratitude and respect, I would love to welcome now this gentleman, ladies and gentlemen, he's been working with NDU, he's been working with other institutes as well. He's a professor himself, and he's a PhD doctor. I mean, imagine that the amount of knowledge he has will be shared with you in just another few minutes as well. So he happens to be the professor of religion and world politics. What a wonderful and beautiful mix in the first place.
Right?
And not just that, he's been the professor at the Southwest University of Political Science. And ladies and gentlemen, he is Dr. Ejaz Akram. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. Good morning. Good to be here with you, Shazad and Shiza.
Thank you
Always a
very much,
pleasure
sir.
to
Wonderful
have
to
you.
have you. And it's auspicious for us to kind of get this opportunity to interview you as well. But first things first, I mean, even if it's confidential, you should know your way out. What was being discussed in the meeting?
Well, as you saw in the limited media coverage since the last couple of days, that the Prime Minister has been very seriously and earnestly working on establishment of an authority that would begin the work on ethical revival in Pakistan.
Okay.
So now, if you ask anybody around the world that have the ethics in your country, in your city, in your family, have they continuously improved or have they deteriorated? I ask this question around the world to many people, and in my opinion, vast majority of people actually they suggest that somehow the ethics have seemed to regressed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you
And
believe
so
it though?
And we get direct evidence of this, that those structures that have sociologically measured corruption have seen that the corruption is on the upswing. The corruption has increased, which actually indicates that there is indeed an ethical deficiency in the world.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I think let's take this question forward and take your personal views on it. Do you think the ethical situation in Pakistan specifically is deteriorating? Whatever, yes or no, why so? And secondly, when we talk about ethics, so whoever, if we were to read Plato for that matter, if we were to read Kant's view on ethics or some form of ethics as well, everyone thinks, the philosophers, that ethics is subjective in a way that what you think is ethical or what you think is moral might not be for me, unless and until we maybe operate on the same social level. So you tell me, if a liberal were to look at this authority that we're creating, and of course, for the sake of doing justice to my question as well, they would think that you're creating a moral police. We don't need no police over here. You know what I mean?
And with this, I will actually back this up with what Hazrat Ali alayhi salam actually said as well, and he said that do not raise your children the way your parents have raised you.
Times are
So obviously
different.
times change. So do you think asking this question whether we are still more ethical, or do you think if it has regressed? I think there can be two opinions to that.
Yes. To answer your question first, Shizad,
Yeah.
and I'll come to answer a very good question
Sure.
that Shizad just asked also.
Thank you.
That Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he said that do not raise your children the way you were raised, keep in mind that this was a generation of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And the Prophet had received the book from Allah, which he preached to everybody else.
Yep.
And changed so many lives. Now, when he passes away and the four rightly guided caliphs, their era begins. In this era, you find a lot of people who were the Sahaba, who were born, who were the same generation as the Prophet, or as the Khulafai Rashidun. And they were also, most of them actually grew up the 23-year ministry that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to the Prophet, in which he comes and he brings the Quran and brings it for the people, and becomes a mercy for the communities. So the idea, the suggestion by Sayyidina Ali at that time was that do not let your children regress in the days of the Jahiliyyah,
All
so the
right,
days of
makes
ignorance.
sense.
But now that the Prophets as an exemplar has come, you model your lives upon him. That was, so the Islam was the new thing, Jahiliyyah was the old thing.
Right.
So now, the second issue that Shiza just raised, which is a very profound one, that is it possible to be ethical people without being religious?
Yeah.
Is that the question, Shiza?
That is one facet of the question, of course, but also since ethics is objective, I do see a lot of, let's say, youngsters or quite a cluster of people, pointing fingers at you. Why are you my moral police?
Right.
Don't I know what's right for me?
Something happened around the turn of, at the time when so-called the modern world began. That the beginnings of liberalism start with beginnings of modernity, in which liberalism, modernism are basically premised on denial of transcendence.
All right.
So inasmuch as these are creeds that that take into concern only immanence of things, they are habitually based on a philosophical idea that of its philosophical necessity must deny transcendence.
All right.
Which means that in transcendental way of thinking, we feel that there is a world above this world, which is more superior to this world and exerts final control over this world. That's a spiritual worldview. All religions, not only Islam, all religions believe that.
Yes.
But then you comes along another creed that says, no, there is no such thing as another world. This is the only world. Life is an accident, evolutionism, and therefore eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we shall die. And so if that becomes your guiding principle, then there is absolutely no reason why I should not kill a person if I can get away with it.
Yeah,
Right.
because there's no hope.
There is no hope and there's no accountability. Let's say that you have a phone sitting here and nobody's watching, and I nick your phone, I steal it, because nothing will happen to me, nobody see me.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But if I say, nay, 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 Allah is watching me,
Yeah.
the fear of God and the love of God and the knowledge of God, mukhafa, muhabba, mu'arifa. If these are my guiding principles, you don't need an external mechanism of law and its enforceability upon which we spend millions and millions of rupees and still end up with a lot of crime.
True.
Right.
So the self-restraint, the inner restraint that comes from deen, that comes from the creeds which the primordial communities into which they are born will actually try to hold their own exemplar as the perfect person to emulate. If it's a Buddhist society, they will look at Buddha. If it's a Christian society, they would look at Christian moralism. If it's a Hindu society, they will look at Krishna and Rama.
Okay.
If it's a Muslim society, we look at the Prophet.
Prophet sallallahu alaihi
So,
wasallam. But sir, from what you're actually trying to say, do you think that this is actually the prime time of ethics being in crisis?
yes, because if you look at the sociological surveys around the world, they point towards high corruption,
Yes.
which is at once sociological.
That's true. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll have to agree to it.
Number one. Secondly, we look at the rampant crime. The type of crime, unfortunately, which in our country that has begun to take place, will really, will shock you.
Exactly.
So much child abuse, so many rape cases.
Insanity.
So it's really a lot of insanity which is going on. So I think that these indications should be enough for us to ponder upon the urgency and the exigency of this matter.
Yeah.
That you cannot ethicize your society in 1 week or 1 month.
True.
But you cannot also delay efforts which are multilateral, all different levels from the state to the society, to do something about it.
Exactly. And in addition to that, sir, now I believe that I just got nostalgic about it, because earlier when I was a kid, I was very habitual of having carbonated drinks, right? So I used to go to Karachi, where my khala lived, and they used to have stacks of carbonated drinks because they used to love them. And I would wake up 6 in the morning, because they won't share it with me. I was a little kid. Wake up the domestic help and be like, hey, can you open the bottle? Because I couldn't open the bottle myself. And so then what my father did was, he was like that, he's so kind of, I'll have to share it in Urdu, that he's so nadida about carbonated drinks. Let's just fill up the fridge with carbonated drinks and let's see how much he can have. So I think in a matter of 10 days or 12 days, I gave up on having carbonated drinks. So there are two ways of making sure that we are going to kind of teach this teaching. Now, one is obviously the method of restraint, and the other is of giving an open opportunity to anybody and everybody of doing whatever they are doing, and then finally give up on it because there's nothing in it. Either you're harming yourself. So what strategy would you kind of idealize that, okay, this is the way forward, where everybody will have their own freedom, but then at the same time they will be walking on the right track?
Right. You see that we have established as a social fact in the Durkheimian sense that the problem of the crisis of ethics exists.
Yes.
Since it exists, now the question is how do we want to go around taking care of that? But first, before we embark upon the idea of how we will fix this problem, we have to understand what caused the problem, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And in my opinion,
Sorry.
the cause of this issue was out of the deepest causes of this issue was a secular idea believed in the values of modernism, that religion is a backward form of consciousness. It no longer has any connection in making the society more ethical and making it more progressive.
So rather saying that it's not any more relevant.
Yes, that in 1970s, 60s and 70s in the Soviet Union as well as in the United States of America or West in general, there was a notion that religion is a backward form of human consciousness which will wither away and die.
Yeah.
There was another attendant notion that family is a drag on freedom and that will also wither away and die.
Yeah.
Now that was revised very quickly, and the families today, however fractured they are still around.
Yeah.
And religion too, however fractured or however subversive it has become in some of its manifestations, is also still around.
Yeah.
You cannot say that the intact families are not around and some proper pious people are not around. Of course they're around. The question is that those who were impious or corrupt have actually gotten into the positions of power.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so we must work and strive towards making a mechanism which prevents that.
Absolutely.
And we have examples.
Very sure.
We have examples of China, we have examples of Japan, we have
Yeah.
examples of South Korea, that, and some European nations as well, in which there are certain structural barriers that prevent these type of people who have greed, which is the malady of the soul, come up into in power and then hence abuse people like you and I.
Well, it definitely requires such people who have the power to curtail this menace as well in authoritative positions. Now, Dr. Sab, I'm going to take you back to a while where you said that if we're dealing with the people of whatever religion, that is what our approach should be, because that is what they listen to. Spiritual world is definitely something else. It connects to everyone.
Yeah.
Please pardon me on this, but this is, in my eyes, the truth as well. A very controversial figure again, Pervez Hoodbhai, actually said something, and it makes sense over here. He said that nationalism in Pakistan is religion. Imagine, so anywhere you meet a Pakistani, and if you ask him, who are you or what's your identity, the first thing will not be Pakistani. The first thing will be a Muslim, which is brilliant to associate yourself with religion, yes. But where you said that we have to police, okay, not police, probably, sort of train them or build their character through religion, then I want you to sort of explain to us, you're looking at a chunk or millions of people over here who are blindly, I don't know how decently to put it, it is almost religio-political in their case. So whatever you tell them, first of all, they will follow it blindly. And we have seen it recently, there's also a season of protests and everything which is driven by this very sentiment as well.
Yes.
So how do you take on those people?
Right. Mr. Hoodbhai has his own opinions.
Some of them are okay, to be honest.
But I will tell you, a vast majority of the people in this country do not agree with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Whether it's deep secularism hinging towards agnosticism or atheism and so forth, a vast majority of the people in this country would not fall for that. But however, we must deal with the idea that is being presented here, and which is that if, like you said, that you ask people of Pakistan or anybody, who are you, and you get a certain answer.
Yes.
For this point of view, which he has presented, the norm is the Western world.
Okay.
The norm is the Western experience, that you ought to become like the West in your attempt to make progress and to move from a non-progressive to progressive stand. West and their experience are invoked. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that every society, every civilization has to chart out their own course.
They're unique, yes.
And for us, what is the relationship between nationalism and patriotism, is a different one than one that exists in Europe.
Don't you think there are bloodlines in all of these?
Blood
For
lines?
us, blurred lines, yes.
Well, I'll tell you that as Muslims, the Muslims always knew in history that what their qawm is, the
Of
nation.
course, yes.
That idea of qawm is not the same thing as nation or nation in French. They're not the same thing. Even today, you go to the Patwari's office and you ask, he'll put your name, Mr. So-and-so, son of so-and-so, qawm kya hai? And qawm is normally the caste that is used in the Patwar Khana.
Right.
Exactly.
Right?
And just very recently there was this clip which went viral, which was Mr. Fyazul Hassan Chauhan talking about Gujars, and so he kind of said what he wanted to say, and you're very correct on that, sir, as well. But sir, these meetings, sir, they do happen. A lot of MOUs are being signed, and we never see a very realistic version of all of these meetings as well. So towards the end of this segment, I would certainly want to know that how the government actually plans to make sure that they're going to do the youth building, and that too in the light of Seerat of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what is your master plan? And how do you think that we will be able to calculate the results? Do you think it's possible?
Well, when governments take initiative on any plan, there are few things which have been done before let's say you set up a hydroelectric plant,
Yeah.
and it has been set up dozens of times before.
Yeah.
You know how to do it, or at least you know what are the mistakes you must not repeat that encountered us in the earlier projects, right? But here, this is being done pretty much for the first time.
Yeah.
In a long, although every ruler in our national history has always made some references to Islam.
Yeah.
You know, whether it was Islam Nizam Mustafa in Bhutto's time, you had Islamization program with Zia and so forth. You know, so every ruler actually does make some kind of reference. Why they have to make a reference? Because people's beliefs and values are premised on this.
Yeah.
And so.
Other than that, it can be a major vote bank as well.
Yeah, and so but you cannot predict 100%.
True.
That you will make the society very ethical in 1 year or 2 years.
Yeah.
What is important is to plant a baby sapling today, which tomorrow may become a tree.
Inshallah.
And so, journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Definitely.
And I think that we have to sort of appreciate the initiative in that spirit.
Yeah, definitely, for sure, we are doing
Thank
that.
you very much, Dr. Saab, for being with us. It was lovely to be in conversation with you, and that too to kind of talk about how we are actually going to do our nation building on a bigger perspective, on a bigger picture as well, which is great. But Shiza, now coming down to you as well, obviously, people in this world, they want newer cell phones, they want jewelry, they want diamonds, and at times they do kind of spend beyond what they can actually spend as well. Do you think that you're that kind of a person who spends beyond their means?
I mean, I have my days, if I'm being honest. No, but well, I think other than that as well, the specific things that you did mention, I think that they do give people a sense of luxury and ownership. So why not?
Exactly. So there's a reason why we are actually sharing this footage, ladies and gentlemen, that there's Francium there's a matter named Francium, which actually costs $1 billion to see.
Per gram.
Only 300,000 atoms that to together, but it only stays there for 22 minutes. So I'm not sure whether you're willing to spend $1 billion. Well, for that, obviously, we really need to work another 5 years, I would love to say, because Allah Mia, you know it. You can make it possible. You can make anything possible as well.
Well, inshallah. But you're right. It is the most expensive element on the face of planet right now. And where you said that the half-life is 22
And it's
minutes.
highly chemically reactive, which is why, it kind of just absorbs
immediately, within 22 minutes or even less immediately, the isotope breaks down into radium or radon as well, which is, well, right now of no use.
Yeah.
But it was so funny.
And you cannot even steal it. Imagine it's going
Exactly.
to go out in 22 minutes.
And
So it's better to be a good human, ladies and gentlemen.
than to have francium as well. But the funny thing is, one of the articles said that scientists know how to produce it, and they will only now produce it for the sake of the people who are billionaires and willing to pay billions of rupees just to see francium.
we
Because
saw
other than
francium
that,
today. Wow.
exactly. Because other than that, right now we don't know if there's any use to it as well.
Exactly, but imagine just because we have shared this news with you, ladies and gentlemen, you will obviously be looking forward to the news, and you will start to search for this very amazing matter which is out there as well, and it's going to disappear in 22 minutes. So imagine that we've actually formed an opinion for you. Now this is something which we actually want to discuss in the next segment, that how media, electronic or paper media or print media or any other sort of media, may it be social media as well, how do they form opinions for people by themselves? It's something which we will be talking about, because I don't know whether you're going to research about francium or not, but we've done our research and we are right. Let's go for a short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Good morning.
Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Well This Morning, ladies and gentlemen. In the first segment, of course, we spoke about how we need to improve the ethics of the entire nation, or, well, together build our character strongly. But right now, we're talking about the role or the impact media has on the minds of people and how an opinion becomes a public opinion. Not just print media, of course. I mean, not newspapers aren't that popular anymore. Things are in apps now. I mean, e-paper is definitely a thing, but traditional media, TV for that matter, or social media, the newer versions. Very quickly, let me tell you something. This was probably, so when the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif Sahab, had to be indicted. So they were, for quite some days, you know, there were hearings going on, and a lot of people were speculating what not. So in one of our classes in university, we sat together in a group. It was an activity for us to sort of assume what was going to happen with the indictment. And a group of my class fellows, we sat and wrote down 5 to 6 sheets of, you know, of what Justice Khosa Sahab might, you know, would have said. It was fake, obviously, because the results weren't out, obviously. They were just our speculations. And we tweeted it. We were like, hey, you know what, results just in, we think this is what's going to happen. Within 2 minutes, Kashif Abbasi and the likes of such anchors read our papers on their show saying that I have a personal message from Khosa Saab with the indictment results. Can you believe no one really checks? And this is the type of opinion or, you know, the type of impact news actually has in a lot of people. We need to sort of change that in terms of just delivering the truth. Very quickly, here's a small report on how media actually has an impact. Let's take a look at it, and when we come back, we will be in conversation with some journalists on
Let's do that.
How to go about it.
Mass media can be defined as a technology which is intended to communicate or reach a mass audience. Mass media is actually the primary means of communication for the general public to communicate with each other as well as on a grander level. The most popular types of mass media include newspapers, radio, television, internet, magazines, and more. Media connects us to information and knowledge about everything. With the passage of time, technology has grown. In early 90s, people used to read newspapers and listen to radio to get the information, and then television was invented, and it took the place of newspapers and radio to some extent. Nowadays, internet is the most common and frequently used medium and source of information. Mass media plays an essential role in shining the spotlight on the masses as the general public can express their views and opinions freely. This way, it becomes the voice of the voiceless, thus giving the right platform for the people to use their right to express freely.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so you've heard it loud and clearly as well. So we're very lucky. We are going to indulge in the conversation with one of our very amazing and finest journalists over here from PTV World, and his name is Mr. Farooq Fayaz. Hello, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum salam, Shahzad and Shahzad. How are you? I'm good.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for kind of taking our time and making sure that you're going to grace our show with your presence as well. But alongside you, We actually have another journalist as well who's actually joining us from Lahore. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very lucky that we've actually been joined by Miss Durre Nayab, and that too over Skype. Hello Durre, how are you? Assalamu alaikum, good morning.
All right, I think there may be a little hearing problem, but until and unless we do have Durre Nayab with us, I think I'm going to start my conversation with Farooq over here.
All right, go ahead.
All right, so Farooq, we know that you've been a part of this particular industry, news, and not even just media news, for quite some years now, mashallah. You've done private, and now specifically you're doing PTV for some years. First of all, I want you to sort of describe or explain through your own personal experiences, if private or state media, which one has a greater impact on the public?
Well, nowadays, obviously, it's private media because of the stigma, you can say, which is attached to state media, that it is a state propaganda tool. People tend to believe more in private media.
Yeah.
So, but earlier, obviously, when there was just one channel, PTV, people used to believe whatever was shown on PTV, whatever information was given to them on PTV.
But in terms of PTV, I think with people do still have that connection or belief with it. Don't you think so, in terms of trust as well? Because when we talk about...
I think it has changed now.
I don't think so. I'm talking about far-flung areas. Again, sorry to disagree, but that's my opinion. Far-flung areas or
obviously,
villages where there's
places
no such thing
where
as
there
cable.
is no access to private channels, there PTV still has its...
I mean, if there are places where they do not really have access to private channels, imagine that those are the places where there's no internet, those are the places where there are hardly any schools as well, God forbid. I mean, that's how the condition is. So imagine, you cannot blame them, and you know that's not the true representation of our society if you're talking about progressive Pakistan. Now coming down to where, you know, there's access to Wi-Fi, you know, there's access to all sorts of media. In fact, people have these TV boxes in their houses where they can kind of, you know, in a click of a remote, they can view any news. Now imagine that, you know, this is one example which I've shared like 2 or 3 days ago as well, where there was this billboard in New York and it says, making Taliban look great again. You know, so this is how it is, and we really need to be honest about it. So media does make or form your opinion about an individual, about a political party, may it be anything, may it be a court case, whatever is going on. But then unfortunately, the problem is that when people do realize that, hey, you know what, that we were actually dismayed on this case or on this news, then eventually I've seen journalists coming back on screen and saying, hey, you know what, we were really sorry, we never knew that, and that's it, case is done. But imagine the kind of damage you've done to anybody else while you were kind of reporting that. Do you think that still happens, in all honesty?
Shahzad, people by nature, they have this innate desire to know what is happening around them, in their surrounding, what is happening in the world, and to know what is happening around the world, they need some source of information.
True.
Since in today's world, the main source of information has become media.
Yeah.
Whether it's the television channels, print media, radio channels, or more recently, social media.
Yep.
So since they are looking towards those channels, looking at those channels, seeing stuff on them, they build their opinions based on what they are seeing, what is being thrown their way.
Exactly, and that's what it is. And you know, over here in Pakistan, I think that this is something which is very disturbing. And I've kind of conveyed it to my father, my uncles as well, because every time, very sorry, they're going to sit together, so they will be talking about one or the other political show, and they'll be like, hey, you know what, he said that about him, he said that about him as well. And I was like, you know, for a thing in which you cannot really make a difference or you cannot bring about a change, why are you even talking about it? You know, that's number one. Because I think majority of the Pakistanis towards the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, are wasting their time talking about socio-political issues or socio-economical issues as well, which I don't get, because, you know, you're not able to do anything, you cannot bring about any change, so what's the point? That's number one. Now, number two is, I've seen it for myself, I've been on the news anchor's desk as well, you know, so I still remember that when I used to come into the office, you know, I would open up that, you know, password they have given us, and, you know, we kind of read each and every news because it was important and imperative so that we do not make mistakes on air. We never, or I haven't really seen any other news anchor kind of ask the news producers that whether this news is authentic or not. You know, our job was to just read it, and we used to kind of equip ourselves with whatever the latest updates were, but never a news journalist have actually asked their news producers whether the news is authentic or not. Why do you think that this practice is there? May it be private, may it be public?
Do you
Well,
agree?
Shahzad, actually, it's not the job of the news anchor to ask
Yeah.
the editor or producer whether it's right or not. The anchor assumes that since the news has passed through many stages, it must have been vetted by many individuals.
True.
So by the time it reaches the news anchor, it would be true.
All right.
Okay.
Or probably the channel actually wants you to kind of make sure that this news is out there.
Yeah.
You know, because there's always an agenda. When we talk about private, I'm very sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but whenever we talk about private media, there's always an agenda which they want to fulfill. It might be people paying a lot of money for this news to be out there,
Of
or
course.
probably, and you know, this happens, and people are opinionated by the way we actually run the news as well, or the country runs the news.
Right. I actually want to take some opinions on this from Dure Nayab Akram as well. She happens to be a journalist. She has joined us through a voice call. Assalamu alaikum, Dure Nayab. Can you hear us? Dure Nayab Akram, you have joined us in World this morning as a journalist. I hope you can hear us. So we've been having this conversation about how media or different forms of media and news might impact public opinion. Do you think it does, first of all?
Dure Nayab, I guess you are a little dur from
Oh.
us.
Yeah, I think there's still
Yeah,
a
I think
technical
that there is a
difficulty.
technical
So
glitch, ladies and gentlemen. We because the Skype wasn't really working very well, so we kind of took her onto the phone as well. But I believe that even that's not working out for us today. See, that's how I'm going to form your opinion in believing that, hey, you know what, there's a technical glitch.
right. But gentlemen, don't you feel like, now here's the thing, because I know with both of you, I do discuss, you know, dramas and entertainment and all sorts of media content.
The last time, ladies and gentlemen, she actually discussed a season with me. I was home alone. I started watching it, and I got so scared that I was like, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to call her and be like, why did you actually recommend this series to me? You know, it was really scary. Did you watch that?
He did, at
The House of Secrets?
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah.
haven't still not.
Yeah, please don't watch it.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God,
it's going to ruin your mindset for that day at least.
Seriously, I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
really
I
looking
mean,
forward to watching.
I know you were, and you should, by the way, don't listen to him. Anyway, so here's the thing. When we talk about media, it's not just news anymore, because while, yes, news you go to or tune into when you want to know what's happening around, but the other form of media is something that's around you 24/7. So I was just discussing this as well, and in my lifetime, in front of my eyes, I feel like we have a perfect example of how soft power is actually making a sovereignty of a nation so prominent on the face of the map as well. I'm talking about Korea, specifically South Korea. K-pop, you know, K-dramas, K-music, everything KKK. And I tell you what, everyone around me, my friends, my siblings, even my mom for that matter, the other day she mentioned a K-drama to me. She was like, you know what, we're the closest to them in culture. And I feel like that's beating Hollywood, Bollywood for that matter. A lot of people all around the world are now searching Korea, looking for destinations in Korea, trying to, you know, plan vacations in Korea. Perfect example of how it works. Do you think it is some of the things that will work in the favor of Korea, of course, and is it something that Pakistan can learn from?
Well, it's something good now, you know,
Of
at
course
least.
it's good, but don't you think we
It's
can
good
learn
Yeah, it's
from
good
diplomacy.
for South Korea if their culture is being promoted abroad. People, youth, look towards their culture and what's going on in
It's
there.
wonderful.
I mean, yeah, Pakistan can learn from them, but then it's complicated, you see. How do you make an impact on people? I'm not really sure how South Koreans did it. I mean, I'm not really into
they
that
did it with
K-pop
the
thing, so maybe you guys can tell me
The
better.
K-pop boys
What's
are
so
actually
attractive in it?
massive, yeah.
So I'll tell you, I feel like I don't know what's so attractive in it, but from what I've heard, and people feel like they can relate to it culturally, especially from
I
Pakistan
don't
probably,
believe
or in
it.
this region.
I think they
No,
just
no,
kind
I
of come up with
swear.
this sentence, but you know, have you seen
I
the
think it
Korean
started
boys?
from
They're
that
so
song,
good-looking.
Gangnam Style.
Everybody
It
wants
Gangnam
started
to
from that
Style,
Gangnam
yes.
Style, I think. Yeah, a very famous song. It started from there, I think.
So
It's-
I think
it
it
was
does
It's
from
take
about
something
producing good
popular.
content. But okay, you know, I'll give you a reference where you will actually understand how media kind of influences you.
Okay.
Now imagine that back in 1990s, the kind of Hollywood movies we used to watch, people would, you know, kind of take influence from those drinking scenes in Godfather and
yes.
Cigar and whatnot. And then from 2000 till early 2010, we would see how actually different sorts of drugs were brought in and how people would want to do them
Yeah.
and experience them and be like, hey, you know what, we are the thing. And then
Right.
eventually, then there was this time when Netflix came up with Pablo Escobar and other documentaries.
Narcos, yes.
Yeah, Narcos, where they were like influencing other people in doing
Yeah,
so much
yeah.
and so. And this was, I believe, was an indirect marketing technique in how to kind of make sure that everybody out there in the world will be so aware of the drugs these days as well. So the negative influence has been there. Nobody will actually take a positive influence that, hey, you know what, towards the end of it, Pablo Escobar was killed. Nobody
He was
talks about that.
Yeah.
What they talk about is that he was one of the richest men in 1970s, and that too having billions of dollars, where he only had a registered company of only 3 cabs. And he was making billions of dollars. So I think that's where it's correct that how media kind of influences us as well, and everybody from big screen, because I always talk about this very amazing Hollywood film, Battleship. And once I saw it in the cinema, I've seen it 10 times. After watching the film, I feel like as if, you know, I'm working for Pakistan Navy and that there's a hero inside me as well. And this is how people take influence. How do you, what I would want to wrap it up with, how do you want people to kind of behave when they actually listen to a news for the very first time? Do you want them to check it? Do you want them to check the source? And then do you want them to form an opinion from that news only, or multiple other news sources?
No, you're right. Yeah, they should check it from multiple sources. And here I would also like to mention the reason why electronic media is still favored among people when it comes to authenticity of news. You see, in social media, whenever people see something on the social media, it might excite them, it might make them curious. But I know a vast majority of people don't simply believe it unless they see the same news or information on electronic media. The reason for that is electronic media is still to a large extent regulated. We have PEMRA, we have other media regulators. Then the channels, the media organizations themselves have their strict standards, criteria, and through which they monitor all the content that they're going to broadcast. But we don't have that thing on social media. Anyone can put up anything on the social media.
Right.
So that's wonderful, and which is why, Farooq, we are actually not going to hold you back as well, because you literally did make sense and you wrapped it up very wonderfully for all of us as well. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to hold Farooq for any longer than 2 or 3 minutes, obviously he's going to miss out on the latest updates which he needs to bring to you as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, for everybody who's out there, please make sure that you kind of catch up on the repeat as well, which is going to be at
midnight.
Yeah, 5 past midnight, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry, yes.
But it's perfectly okay. Thank you very much, Shiza, for being always a wonderful co-host. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are wrapping it up, and our news anchors are going to take over with the latest updates. And in the middle, there's a commercial break.
Oh,
Allah
yes,
Hafiz,
of course.
good morning.
Take care.